Welcome to the future. Welcome to Bitcoin Bit2M. How are you all doing? On this October 6th, 2025, another month. What a month. What a start to October we've had. As you know, doing skyrocketing, we're almost at all-time highs, all-time high, close to about 125,000 or so. And just saying hello to those of you in the live chat. We saw each other not too long ago. LV, how's it going? How are you? We were there. We greeted each other at Jose Luis's event. Giovanni was there too, who's also here now. And we'll say hi to Jesus Miguel, Luis Roberto as well. Well, good afternoon to everyone, and thank you so much for joining us once again. How are you, Giovanni? How are you?
How's it going, Javi? Hello to the community. Yes, actually, you were just mentioning that we saw each other at the Community Point event here in Madrid. In fact, there are several people from the community who wanted to attend but couldn't. But I think soon there will be quite a few gatherings where we'll be able to share and discuss some of the usual topics that come up. Actually, the talks they usually have there as well, the atmosphere really heats up with the topic of Bitcoin and so on, and there are some small debates, so that's always something to be grateful for.
Well, that's great, Giovanni. I think we're at a point where we're all wondering what's going to happen in this last quarter of the bullish year. Traditionally, in the Bitcoin and cryptocurrency market, as you know, in 2021 and in 2017, starting in October, regardless of what happened in September, but especially when September was a green month, the last 3 months were very, very positive. As you know, the macro environment is very favorable with everything that's happening. Gold is practically at $4,000 an ounce. Gold is very much like Bitcoin's closest and most traditional cousin. The significant difference is that it is far more institutionalized, much more widely adopted by major central banks, large investment funds, and substantial players with considerable assets who are looking to effectively protect themselves and their wealth. We're currently seeing significant problems in Japan, and today in France, the esteemed president of the Republic, who had only been in office for a mere month, has unexpectedly resigned, which has consequently caused debt interest rates here in Europe to dramatically spike. There's a pervasive global instability that's actively driving people to seek much-needed refuge in secure reserve assets that can effectively protect them. That's why we're seeing gold at historic highs, and we're also seeing the so-called liquidity, which is the measure used to see how much money is flooding the market, all the markets. The Bank of China, the bank here in Europe, the central bank in Europe, in the United States, the Federal Reserve, and so on. And of course, all that money, that fiscal dominance, which basically means money the government is spending to cover its fixed monthly expenses like pensions, public employees, military matters, and all these things, eventually, little by little, through different channels, ends up flowing into various assets. That's why you see the stock markets at all-time highs, the Nasdaq, the Dow Jones, the S&P, Bitcoin, gold, everything is at record levels. Can that change? Well, I think as far as what matters to us, look, I'll share the chart with you if that's okay. I have it ready here.
Actually, Javi, while you're sharing, we also have B2Me crypto news, and among the news we have, it says Bitcoin surpassed Amazon, becoming the 7th most valuable asset in the world, and we have quite a bit of information like that. Look, it's already in 7th place, so the truth is that surpassing Amazon is quite something pretty remarkable, and it also says that the stablecoin giant is loading up on Bitcoin, so Tether's portfolio after its latest BTC purchase is also quite significant.
Look, Giovanni, I think what's happening is that we're in, well, what we've talked about many times, 2024 and 2025 are a turning point for the entire Bitcoin and cryptocurrency market. And the main catalyst for all this change was the approval of the ETFs last year. Why? Because the issuers of those ETFs, the likes of BlackRock, Fidelity, all these companies have so much power that they've, let's say, exerted pressure and had to lobby within the US government. On top of that, politicians there have already received funding and subsidies from the crypto and Bitcoin market. So with Donald Trump winning, we've had a bull market. I've shown you the chart. I don't know if we already have it on screen or not yet.
Yes, no, not yet. Now we have it. In any case, this really helps with global adoption a lot, actually, because when people see the news and everything, and there's quite a bit of noise about it, they start looking at Bitcoin again, what it is, how it works, and how they can get in and make those kinds of purchases, see it and manage it. Otherwise, as we know, people want to see other types of content. So honestly, it really helps a lot in terms of global adoption, even though we always agree that the topics of decentralization, self-custody, and DIM are great, but they're not for everyone.
Right? No, of course. And you B2us who are joining us here, just a reminder that we are a tool. Bit2Me is a bridge that allows you to buy and sell. Later, we'll talk a bit about the products. We'll do a review, which I think is good to do every month in case there are new people or if we make any updates, which we'll mention later, so you have the options. We all have a learning curve. We start by understanding Bitcoin from the basics or other cryptocurrencies or stablecoins or whatever it may be, and we need to go with a reliable player. And I will never get tired of saying that what we have achieved together, including the compliance, legal, and especially the cybersecurity teams, is that we have been granted the MICA license, which is a mandatory license that came into effect this year, and we are the only Spanish exchange that has obtained this license, right? And I think
that after many internal audits, external audits, and preparing the entire suite for this, because our suite has been getting ready for it, there were even times when we had to list cryptocurrencies, crypto assets that weren't available. And as you were saying, it's a secure entry point. Why? Because we also have many clients who, for example, say, hey, I also like the self-custody aspect, and they might buy, for example, 2 Bitcoins. One they send to self-custody after buying it on Bit2Me, and the other they leave on BME to use several of the services we offer. But that's the thing. I would say it's not about choosing one or the other, but about choosing with the understanding that it's a tool and picking the best of both worlds.
Of course, in the end, they're just tools, Giovanni. So going back a bit, we've said that the macro situation, both economically and politically, is very turbulent right now. But then here in the Bitcoin and cryptocurrency market, aside from the shift to MICA for a company like Bit2Me, which requires us to meet quality standards aligned with what the regulator demands, beyond that, the foundation of the monetary system is shifting with stablecoins, right? Stablecoins. Why is it important for us to know this? Because stablecoins, and I'm talking about EURC, I'm talking about USDC, which are 2 tokens we have listed on Bit2Me, are issued by a company called Circle in Europe. And that company meets all the necessary requirements to be sold to be able to operate through centralized platforms like BME. Why is it important for you to know this? Because it means that the guarantee standards issued by the European Union through these laws are being met. The MICA law ensures that this actor, Circle, which issues stablecoins, is also backed by deposits, just as the regulator requires. So if you buy EC and have it deposited in staking or use it on different platforms, the part related to the issuing company is covered. Why do I say the part? Because if you move it to DeFi, as Giovanni mentioned, right? There are several tools here. You can use Bit2Me and leave it in staking, which is an option that gives you a percentage depending on your Space Center level. Or you can take it off the platform and use slightly more advanced tools, but also in a wilder ecosystem, as I would call it. You have to be careful.
Javi. Also, it's just as important to distinguish between stablecoins and central bank digital currencies. Central bank digital currencies, sometimes when we go to an event and we're there interacting with people, they're not clear on the difference between one, the central bank currency, and the other, the stablecoins you were talking about.
Right. They're 2 different things. And to give you a clear idea of each one, central bank digital currencies are basically a currency issued by the European Central Bank in this case, or the Federal Reserve. Although over there, with the laws they've passed, they've actually prohibited the Federal Reserve from launching a CBDC because they find it much more interesting that through another law they've enacted called the Genius Act, the dollar is given legitimacy and those issuers are required to buy US public debt. What they do is expand that debt through those tokens, those USDTs, which aren't officially registered yet, but will eventually be distributed worldwide so that anyone, anywhere in the world becomes a buyer of US public debt. I mean, they're geniuses. And here, however, in Europe, we're heading down the path of the CBDC, but it looks like it's going to be delayed until 2029. It doesn't make any sense because here, what's the idea behind stablecoins? The idea is that you do not have to depend on a bank like Santander, BBVA, La Caixa, or the traditional banks with a bank deposit where the bank does whatever it wants with that deposit and you just withdraw or make transfers. Instead, you would have a wallet with tokens issued by those banks or by new companies, following a set of criteria and regulations established by Europe's MICA. And you could transact with whoever you want using intermediary platforms such as traditional banks, Bit2Me, or even directly through a wallet installed on your mobile phone. And for example, the other day I was at a talk. Giovanni, I'm rambling, but I'll share the chart now. I think it's important too, since we left it there and haven't said anything about it.
Yes, in fact, we removed it temporarily.
Wait, so the other day I was at an event that it was organized by El Confidencial, and Alfredo Munoz, who is a very well-known lawyer, was speaking. Who knows a lot about this ecosystem, said that in Bolivia, where they're facing a significant political and financial crisis, there are already more dollars in USDT in the wallets of Bolivians than in the bank accounts of Bolivian banks. But what has happened here in Europe, which you need to know and very few people are aware of, is that since the introduction of the MICA law and the approval of Circle as an issuer of USDC, USDC now has the same legal status as legal tender. In other words, it is recognized as legal currency. And why is that so important? It's extremely important. Because until now, if you made a payment with USDC, you had significant tax implications. Not anymore. Now it's officially considered money. There's no longer a cumbersome swap, no conversion, no exchange like you typically have with Bitcoin, Ethereum, or BNB. This is simply using tokenized money that has been fully legitimized by the regulator. Therefore, we are at a turning point, and this is going to open up thousands of possibilities and countless opportunities. To give you an idea, the stablecoin market currently has a capitalization of around $300 billion. So it's significant, but it's still a relatively manageable piece within the monetary and financial system. However, what the US Secretary of the Treasury said is that in the next 5 or 10 years, this is going to increase tenfold. And that's not even taking into account what entities from other jurisdictions or other countries might do by issuing their own stablecoins. Therefore, we are witnessing the significant emergence of a truly new form of digital fiat money that is going to spread everywhere across the globe and will effectively enable all that extensive tokenization of various financial assets that so many people have consistently talked about, including debt instruments, corporate bonds, equity stocks, and all these other valuable things. These crucial financial assets being fully represented on a distributed ledger technology on a secure and transparent database, right? That we can use those stablecoins, and that in the future on platforms like Bit2Me will be able not only to buy Bitcoin and sell it for euros or other cryptocurrencies, but also for shares of Telefonica, Tesla, or whatever we want. In other words, what's going to happen is that the world will become interconnected, and stablecoins will be the lubricant that makes it possible for all those rails to be connected and to work. This is crazy. This is brutal. Giovanni?
Great, Javi. Now, I hope they put back what you're sharing. Remind them that we're already collecting the questions you're asking us, and as we go along, we'll answer them. For example, there are already 2 questions that have been left for us, and we'll answer them as best we can. That's pretty much it. Just keep leaving your questions in the chat. We'll save them so that later, when we get to the Q&A section, we'll answer them, all right? So, thank you very much to everyone who's participating. To those who are greeting us, is fantastic.
All right, so let's move on to the chart if that's okay with you, Jose. Okay, here I've drawn 4 vertical black lines. They're not exact because what they're meant to indicate is the halving, but I haven't marked the exact day. Still, they're spaced every 4 years or every 210,000 blocks, as you know. So where are we in the cycle? This is a monthly chart, as you can see at the bottom, which takes us from 2016 up to the present, 10 years. Well, actually a little before that too, but let's focus on that part. So what we see here is that after the halving year, which would be the second year, we have the most bullish part of the cycle. We get this parabolic rise, and what happens then? Here we have the month of October, which would be this candle you see here, okay? Then we have the month of November, which would be this candle, and finally December when it peaked. What do we see in the next cycle? Well, here it was different. It happened earlier, and we had the most bullish market, the biggest surge in the very first year right after the halving. And what happened exactly 4 years ago at the same point we're at now? Well, we had a red September, which would be this candle, then a green October, and a November where the price held steady and then corrected, and that's when we hit the highs. What am I trying to tell you with this? Well, that right now we are exactly here. This is the month of October, okay? This is the month of October. We've had a green September, and theoretically here we would have one last push that could take us where? Well, at this particular point, it's all just predictions. Truly, nobody really knows. Absolutely nobody knows for sure. And there are indeed a lot of people who firmly think this time is genuinely different. Others who certainly don't, and still others who truly believe that with a significant rise from the very lows of 600%, as you can clearly see depicted here, a remarkable 600% from the 2022 lows. So what exactly is the prevailing theory? Which makes a lot of sense is that the people who bought here, the people who bought here, and the people who bought around here, well, they're going to take profits around here. Unless new buyers come in with a lot of strength, institutions, ETFs, treasuries, and all that sort of thing, it's hard to imagine we'll keep seeing a parabolic rise in Bitcoin. And it's entirely possible, indeed quite probable, that we will begin to witness a significant market correction, potentially commencing from the latter part of November, perhaps even mid-November, extending into December. This anticipated correction, while certainly a possibility, might not be as intensely aggressive or as dramatically severe as the one observed during the previous market cycle, which, as a stark reminder, saw a precipitous decline from a peak of 68,000 down to a mere 16,000, representing an astonishing and rather painful 77% drop in value. However, we could realistically be discussing a substantial correction where, for instance, if the market were to reach an impressive $156,000 in the upcoming 2 months and subsequently experiences a notable correction of approximately 40%, we would then be looking at price levels hovering around a still respectable $90,000. Therefore, the most highly probable and widely anticipated scenario is that we will experience a strong and sustained upward push in these final 2 months of the year, leading to the establishment of new unprecedented highs that we have not yet had the opportunity to witness or achieve. That we move into this range, right? Well, yes, it's likely, okay, that we move into this area, that we make one more candle, or this candle extends, we get one more, and then we have a correction. Because if you look, and I put this chart on a 12-month scale, what we have here is a completely bullish chart that's clear since 2009, but what we have is a pattern that clearly repeats itself. Green candle, green candle, green candle, red candle, green, 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 red, green, green, green. We finished the year, and what will happen next year? Well, a red candle. That would be normal, taking historical data into account. Now, there may be people who say, no, since BlackRock is already in, since Fidelity is in, since the strategic reserves of countries are involved, and since treasuries are buying Michael Saylor Strate and a lot of Bitcoin, it's not going to drop that much anymore. If I have to take a stand, and you know I'm always one of the most bullish people you'll ever meet on Bitcoin, it's because I believe that in the long term, Bitcoin will go above $1 million, and this is recorded and will be seen in 5 or 6 years, or whenever the time comes. But in the short to medium short term, we have to be prepared for potential corrections. So obviously this is not investment advice, and if you have a strategy you want to stick to and follow, keep following it, but keep in mind everything we've discussed, okay? So that's it. I just wanted to share my perspective with you, which also changes. It's not a rigid viewpoint. Well, maybe Giovanni, a year ago with the whole ETF thing and all that, I thought the projection could maybe reach $250,000. Now, could it reach $250,000 between now and January or February? Well, maybe it could, because it's a different cycle and it's extending. But if we base ourselves on previous historical data, normally we should see a peak in the next 45 to 75 days. So keep that in mind. But this is not investment advice. No.
Absolutely. In fact, many times when we're discussing and talking, a lot of people say that they don't believe corrections right now will be that severe. In fact, it's becoming, let's say, that the corrections are relatively small just to keep accumulating. Why is that? Because of what you were saying?
I would also like Giovanni to share some important insights about the current cryptocurrency market. In
fact, well, we're asking some questions here. Look, the latest one that came up here says, Sergio, can you open investment or savings accounts for minors on Bit2? Currently, no, you can't. You must be over 18 years old, and each account is personal and non-transferable, okay? So what some users do is gradually save cryptocurrencies, for example, creating a digital piggy bank for their child, grandchild, etc. And then later, once they turn 18, make that transfer to them. There are some proposals on Bit2, my feedback, but for now, that's how it is. You need to have an account, meaning you must be at least 18 years old.
All right, Giovanni, there's something else people often tell me. Javier, you only talk about Bitcoin. I want to know what's going to happen with XRP, with Solana, with Cardano. Look, I think nobody really knows to begin with, okay? But what I can tell you from all the time I've spent in this world is that there are a series of patterns that also repeat themselves in the world of altcoins. This chart you see here is the total market capitalization of altcoins, excluding Bitcoin, okay? Bitcoin is not included here. And what are we seeing here? This is a weekly chart that goes from 2021 up to the present, okay? What we've observed here is a distinct pattern in technical analysis, specifically known as the cup and handle formation. This particular structure, visually represented by this segment of the chart, is a classic indicator. According to established technical analysis literature, the anticipated upward movement for a technical pattern of this nature, which typically unfolds through a sequence of events, initially a price drop until the market identifies a bottom, followed by a recovery back towards its original levels, then a smaller correction that forms the handle component, and finally a decisive breakout, would theoretically be precisely measured. This measurement is traditionally calculated from the highest point of the initial peak to the lowest point reached during the formation of the cup within the market's price action. Such a measurement, when applied to our current scenario, would visually manifest itself in a manner similar to this representation. And crucially, this calculated value would then represent the projected total market capitalization that could potentially be attained if this cup and handle pattern successfully plays out to its full conclusion. In other words, from my point of view, it's a huge, gigantic projection. Is it going to happen? Well, I don't know, but it is true that this is the second time we've touched this resistance, right? This one right here, I mean, it's the same point as the previous all-time high we had here, and here we have this all-time high. Daniel explains this very well. And by the way, we're going to have him on our team because he gave some amazing explanations and many of you have asked for him to come back. I also learned these things from him because he explains them so well. So regarding his projections, it's not that it's going to go up that much, not by a long shot, but I think next week, if I'm not mistaken, we might start featuring his analyses on Bit2Me. Anyway, I wanted to give you a little preview, also mixed in with some of the fundamentals we're seeing in the economic world, in the world of cryptocurrencies, and what fundamentals could trigger this whole market to explode from now until the end of the year. And well, from there, we'll see how things go. I'm going to stop sharing now, Jose, in case you want to take over.
Awesome. In fact, let's take this opportunity to start answering some of the questions. Look, Jim Viston tells us, he says BME is very expensive in terms of commissions, and now they also want to charge a maintenance fee. Let's take it step by step. It's not exactly expensive. We have competitive prices in that same range. You have to take into account how prices are being compared. If you're comparing a wallet with trading on another platform, that's not a fair comparison. That is, we also have Bit and Pro, which is advanced trading, and there the commissions are very low. You can have full control of the market to set stop losses and all that. What happens there? Plus, with the staking program, you can get up to a 50% discount, right? And on top of that, they're already very affordable, just like trading with the stablecoin. On the other hand, in Wallet, we offer a discount based on the loyalty program, where depending on your level, you can get up to 100% off on commissions, okay? That said, it's the same. These are two tools you can use in one way or another. Now, regarding the specific section about charging a maintenance fee, it's actually very straightforward and quite simple to understand. You'll receive an important email. Those who are able to see it in its entirety will get all the comprehensive details, but to sum it up concisely, if you haven't actively logged into Bit2Me for a period of less than 3 months, in other words, you haven't actually signed in at all, actually, just having any amount, even a small one in Bit2Me, will prompt you to check what's precisely happening. Simply logging in, even for a moment, is entirely sufficient. Now, if you're diligently logging in on a daily basis, you'll be generously given up to 500 valuable points, which will significantly help you level up most of the time, enhancing your overall experience. That said, if you have any restrictions, if you're using services like BME or AI, which is staking, in other words, putting your cryptocurrencies to work, or if you're using BME, that's more geared toward people who have just left their assets there, maybe even forgotten about them and aren't even using Bit or AI, just read it. But I'm telling you, it's something very simple. Next question we have here says, let's see, this one's specifically for you, Javi. I haven't quite finished reading it all the way through yet. Rabo Investment. My important question is whether there is a concrete plan to significantly strengthen BM, considering that the current price truly doesn't accurately reflect all the diligent and hard work you all are consistently doing at Bit2Me at this very moment.
Look, in the end, it's what we always talk about. The BM token is a utility token, and the utility that's being built within the platform is something we need to make more and more known. That's why I was talking earlier with Giovanni, even in these programs where you are already people who know the platform, who know the products, that we should do a quick review explaining briefly what synergies BM has with those products. So in the end, buying BM for speculative purposes is not a good idea. It's not a good idea. BM is a tool, it's a product, it's a utility token that might be traded more or go up in price. And hey, that's great. But the purpose of BM has to be to generate interaction, to create improvements, to provide benefits when you use each of the products and services within BME. Because if you don't have that focus, you'll end up depending on a sudden influx of people into the company, into Bit2Me, who really understand everything we're doing, everything we're offering, and who start buying. But for us, it's really a matter of reaching more people on one hand, and on the other, of better explaining what advantages BM offers within the platform. And that's what we're working on. The thing is...
Exactly. In fact, if you notice, Javi, we're about to celebrate BM's anniversary, and I can tell you in advance that we're going to have the opportunity to... It's a special event where Balvaba SP Barnil will be with us, talking about everything we've done so far, the next steps with B, and the latest updates. He'll share some new features, specific data. Honestly, it's all going really well in that regard. On the other hand, as you were saying, we shouldn't forget that it's a utility token of Bit2Me, our native token. What does that mean? Obviously, there will be people who will speculate on the price, and that's fine, but we can't lose focus. This is what it is. It's a utility token, and that's what we're working on now. We're also launching promotions, and we're expanding to other countries like Argentina. We'll keep moving forward throughout Latin America and other regions, so stay tuned. Thank you for your input. We take it into account, but it's also important to note that we do not engage in any kind of market manipulation. We're constantly working. You can see that every Tuesday we announce updates about what we're doing. We're maintaining the current utilities and creating new ones because new products are also coming. And when a new product is launched, if it's not in the first version, in the next one, BM will be integrated with a discount or an exclusive benefit. So that part is quite important. Let's see, what else do we have over there? Well, actually, just a heads up to stay tuned because in November, IL is coming with a BM special in which we will celebrate the anniversary. There's a campaign coming up that we might launch in the next few weeks. And if not, we'll talk about it because we're going to have a very interesting campaign to celebrate that anniversary with all of you, with the BME community and those who are joining as well. I even have some frequently asked questions that were sent to us at the time. I'll share them later. I mean, they're related to some questions that were asked in the Telegram group as well. Javi, we also have a few more here.
Go ahead.
What's going on with the Launchpad Space Center? Roberto tells us.
The Launchpad, for those individuals who may not be familiar with it, and also for those who are already well acquainted with its functionalities, is essentially a comprehensive and robust platform that specifically allows BME to introduce and make available brand new, innovative tokens to you, our valued users, precisely as they officially enter the dynamic and ever-evolving market. So what's happening? Well, all the legal requirements coming into effect in Europe are also having an impact here. The more regulation there is, the less flexible the possibilities become for listing tokens at any given time, especially for projects that haven't undergone prior supervision by the regulator. What does that mean? Well, starting from these next few months, in order to launch a token and list it on a platform that complies with regulations, you have to meet a series of criteria and audits, okay? So we're in a period of transition, Roberto. It's not that we've forgotten about the Launchpad because it's a very interesting product. And in fact, people who already use these kinds of platforms or technologies understand it well. But it's true that there are legal components that have changed over the past few years. So that's something we also have to take into account.
We have some pretty strict filters precisely to ensure that any project has a solid community and a well thought out plan. That said, it's always extremely important to keep track of how these projects evolve. In other words, we act as a showcase to help these projects move forward, to launch their token, carry out their ICO. And from that point on, the responsibility lies with the project itself and with us as users to keep monitoring them. This way, we can decide on our entry strategies, whether to keep increasing our capital or to take advantage of the profits. Because once again, these are projects that launch a utility token. So if we're only approaching this from a speculative angle, that's fine, but we need to keep in mind what we're buying, why we're buying it, and that the project is going to move in that direction. So
I'm going to share a detailed table with you, Giovanni and Jose, because
about the prices.
Well, perhaps you might not be fully aware of this particular detail, Roberto, especially since you are indeed mentioning that the spread and the associated commissions are usually quite expensive on BME, and I would really like to take this opportunity to share this important information because I genuinely believe that some people or various users out there might not be completely aware of this crucial fact. On Bit2Me, we have different ways to buy. We have a platform, a front end, which is basically the wallet. When you open the app directly, you have your wallet at the bottom and a little button for people who are just starting out and want to make a simple purchase without advanced or in-depth knowledge of how all this works. But in this case, Jose, I want us to share this table that is
sharing,
because this is a VAL product. It's a service that maybe some of you don't know about, but it's been running for quite some time. And today, as we'll mention later, we've expanded it with many more cryptocurrencies. So what do we have here in front of us? Roberto, you have a table with the trading volumes over 30 days up here at the top, okay? And at the bottom, you have the amounts. So what do all these amounts mean? They indicate the tier at which you'll be charged one commission or another, starting at 0.6%, which personally I think is a reasonable fee, unless you're a trader making transactions every day, in which case you need to fine-tune things more. But then you'll need to become a maker, not a taker, because if you're a taker, you're not creating a market, you're not placing an order in the order book. What you're doing is taking liquidity, grabbing liquidity from both the buy and sell sides, and that's why we charge you a little more. If you're a maker, what you're doing is placing an order. So if you haven't explored or you don't know where this service is located, basically on the website, if you go through the menu on the left, there's a place called Bit2Me Trading, I think Pro. And in the app, it's the same, Bit2Me Advanced. If you go in and you know how to use an order book and you know how to place market and spot orders, you'll have these commissions. And if these commissions still don't work for you, well, they're the best we can offer, right? We can improve in
that area. If you look, there are also levels from 1 to 7 where we offer up to a 50% discount on those base commissions we mentioned. Also, if you scroll down a bit more,
Exactly what Giovanni was about to explain. If anyone makes transactions with stablecoins or other types of operations for significant volumes, the commission is zero. That is, for smaller transactions, we do charge a fee, but what this allows you to do is convert euros you receive in your paycheck. Let's say you want to convert them to a stablecoin like EURC, which complies with all regulations, European regulation, and which is available on Bit2Me for staking, letting you earn up to 7.5% commission with the Bit2Me service, while at the same time having it connected to your card so you can make payments and get cash back. But on top of that, we're not charging you for making large volume transactions. Of course, if you make a smaller exchange, then yes.
Along those same lines, the Q.
I'm going to put this link in the chat in case you want to join. In fact, there are
many users who carry out their strategies, make a deposit via bank transfer, which is free, and from there, they buy on B and Pro, which is the advanced trading platform. Afterwards, the purchase they've made is put into Bit2Me, which means putting your cryptocurrencies to work through staking. Depending on your level, you get the highest APY, the highest yield percentage, so it really depends a bit on each person's strategy. I'll go back to what I said a moment ago. If you compare it to a wallet, of course, you're going to see a significant difference, but that's because these are two completely different services. One is the ease of use, and that you don't need any prior knowledge. What is a wallet? Because you don't need any prior knowledge. And with a wallet, you can buy, sell, exchange, and even set up recurring purchases. So you don't have to worry about the price because you average out the cost. You can also set buy and sell orders, but in a wallet with what? Obviously, with how easy it is. If you want to take it to the next level, not only do you have the tool, but soon, as you mentioned, Javi, we're going to have Daniel War, who will be explaining some strategies to make the most out of a tool like BME Pro, which is also advanced trading. So you have to make the comparison properly, otherwise you'll end up with a perspective that isn't accurate.
Well, we hope we've answered your questions, Roberto. We went on a bit with your questions, but they're interesting, legitimate questions that surely many other people might have as well. And well, we encourage you to explore both the Bit2Me Pro section and the Launchpad section. When we have news, we truly are the first ones eager to list and share new projects with all of you. In
fact, we actually have quite a few projects on the waiting list. And as you mentioned, it's something we're working on. They have to meet certain minimum requirements. And once those projects are able to pass, especially now with the new regulations you mentioned, then it will be done. Now, one asks why the stablecoins pegged to gold were removed. That, once again, is tied to the European MICA license.
There are two types. Do you want to answer this one?
Go ahead.
No, if you want, go ahead.
No, basically, is that those stablecoins hadn't met the minimum requirements to be listed and all that, so the provider operating from Europe had to remove them.
Well, and I'll also give you the precise technical reason why we absolutely cannot list asset-backed tokens. Why is that exactly? Because in Europe, the prevailing law explicitly requires that if you are an issuer of a stablecoin, it must be fully and completely backed by euros deposited in secure bank accounts, euros or even dollars, but definitely not by an asset, not by debt instruments, and certainly not by gold. Those would be the so-called no assets, meaning specifically asset-backed tokens, which are tokens that are indeed backed by various assets. So it's not the same. It's not the same to have USDC, which is backed by deposits, as it is to have the Pax Gold token, which I actually find interesting. I'm not saying I don't, because it also rises and is pegged one-to-one with the price of gold. So if you have that token, even if you don't have the physical gold, you would have exposure. It would be like a derivative. You'd have a proxy for the price of gold, which would be great. But we can't do it, not because we don't want to, but because in Europe, we're simply not allowed to. And that's basically the explanation.
Javi, we need to keep going, and let's try to answer the questions we have at the end. We have several interesting ones here, some from Alvaro, others from Juan as well. So let's keep moving forward.
If you want, go ahead and mention the promotion we have in case people aren't aware of it.
Since we can now trade more than 400 cryptocurrencies on Bit2Me, we have a special promotion. For the next 4 months, every 400th purchase made on Bit2M IG wallet, it's important that it's on Bit2M wallet, will win a prize of 400 euros in Bitcoin, okay? What does this mean? It means that there will be multiple winners throughout the campaign. The person who makes the 400th purchase will win, then the 800th, and so on, okay? This promotion will end on January 23rd, 2026, but we've already given out 5 prizes so far, all right? So there's still a chance to win. Now, how does this promotion work? I'll quickly repeat. It started on September 25th, 2025 and ends on January 23rd, 2026. The prize is 400 euros in Bitcoin for the user who makes the 400th purchase, the 800th, the 1,200th, and so on, all right? The minimum purchase is 45 euros in any cryptocurrency through Bit2M wallet. Someone once asked in the Telegram group, are stablecoins included? Yes, stablecoins are included. In other words, all 400 cryptocurrencies. But in W, I'll repeat that important detail. So if I buy 90 euros, 60 euros, or 50 euros, that's considered one purchase, all right? It's also important to note that if you want to make several purchases, each one should be 45 euros, another 45 euros in separate purchases. Because if you buy a large amount all at once, it only counts as one purchase. How do you participate? Importantly, through the app, you can go to the promotion section. If you don't have a code, it's promo 400. And from that point on, that's all you need. Any purchases you make will allow you to participate. Let's continue with the next part. Now we also have, I think with this, we'll also answer some of the questions we have. Now it's even easier to do staking with B2Me, which is the savings mode that Javi mentioned. You can now even do it on the web version and the app. Basically, all the purchases you make are immediately put into staking to make our cryptocurrencies work for us, and you can deactivate it at any time, okay? This is something that has been requested quite a lot, and it's also been very well received. We appreciate the feedback and the suggestions you've given us. So that's basically it. The savings mode, which we now call savings mode, is simply that. Purchases you make, or even when you withdraw a cryptocurrency, after a certain period, the system will add it back to staking, okay? In fact, now we can also utilize this brand new and innovative cryptocurrency, Sensor Tau, for the important process of staking. Javi, let's also take a moment to discuss the significant addition of another new and exciting cryptocurrency to B2CAR, which is HVA. Basically, it's the direct successor to Hashgraph. It is the
ecosystem of XRP, XLM, and all the ISO 222 coins, which are theoretically the new interbank messaging system that will replace SWIFT. Well, now you have it on Bit and Car, and I know there are a lot of fans of this conglomerate of companies. And hey, if it goes well and succeeds, we'll all be happy, because in the end, what we want is for this ecosystem to grow. Personally, I prefer Bitcoin, but that's just a matter of preference.
Along those same lines, people have been asking us, as we always say, just ask, and whenever possible, the team will consider it. People were asking for the possibility to have URAI available on AIR, meaning for staking, and to link it directly to the card. Now it's possible for both AT1 and USDR, all right? These are two cryptocurrencies, two stable coins that people had requested, and now it's possible. In fact, thank you all. You put a bit of pressure on us, which is why we always say, your feedback is very important. No, these are the users' voices, and that's how, as a community, we can push for these things. Now,
let me make a quick note here, Giovanni, with a question that I think is a good one. It's not directly related to this, but I find it interesting. It's from Alvaro, who asks whether the recovery fund, which refers to the deposit guarantee fund of the Bank of Spain, would cover up to 100,000 euros in the event of bankruptcy of your company registered in Spain. So I'd like to answer it because I do think it's an interesting question. And the thing is that the deposit guarantee fund protects up to 100,000 euros per person, per account holder, and per institution, but only for banks, savings banks, or credit cooperatives. So even though we are registered with the Bank of Spain and we are a supervised entity, our classification is actually different. We are a virtual asset service provider, a VASP, a virtual asset service provider. In other words, we are not a bank or a credit institution, but just to clarify that point. The important thing is that we are required to keep clients' funds segregated, meaning separate from the company's balance sheet. And in the event that the company goes under, since we are audited, and that's why we have the MICA license, the client's funds remain outside the company's accounting, and they can recover all their money, whether in digital assets or in euros. All right? And I think it's important to mention this. Ivani?
In fact, I just shared a link where we also explain how it works. There's been a bit of mixing of that. Basically, the link, which you can check out later, lists the 5 most important factors for legal protection of clients. All right? Take an extra look at that. That's for cash. Then we have the security measures we have at Bit2Me for cryptocurrencies, as well as insurance of more than 150 million euros or dollars. I got caught up with Legend Enterprise there. It was 150.
Yes, we do have insurance, but in the end, the accounts are segregated. That's not what it said.
Regarding cryptocurrencies, I mean, what you said is indeed for cash.
Another thing you need to know is that now, with the introduction of the MICA law, a lot of things are changing. Insurance companies, the companies that can provide insurance services in case there is a problem with a business, whether it's a bank or another company. Previously, they didn't want to insure any company involved in the cryptocurrency sector because of the risks, the lack of knowledge, security concerns, or whatever the reason may have been. But what happens now? Now that there is a license, a European framework, and there are companies like ours, We have to say it. We are the only Spanish exchange with this license, the MICA license. We can actually take out insurance in case there is a problem. Now they would offer it to us, and that is also a substantial change. Therefore, security and guarantees, because in the end, the MICA law is all about providing guarantees. Guarantees for whom? For you, for the users. And for us, it's really beneficial. Why? Because we've done our homework. We've done things right from the perspective of compliance, regulation, AML, all these things. And now we stand out from the rest of the market from that gray list that has been hovering around for so long. So what you need to be clear about is that a company with a MICA license is one that meets extremely high standards, comparable in some ways to what MiFID II is. MiFID II and MICA are like close cousins. MiFID II is for banks and MICA is for exchanges, and we have the MICA license. Now, we're actually doing the opposite of what the banks are doing. They're going after MICA while we're going after MiFID, because the idea is for us to also offer services from the traditional world, TradFi payment systems, the use of traditional money, so that if you want, you can, for example, deposit your salary directly into BME and so on and so forth. So that's the path we're taking. But I wanted to share this message with Giovanni because it's also a turning point. The issue of MICA for BME, for the industry in general, for Europe, and for users is the legitimization of a scalable business model that has a future and is safe. And that's what we want to share with you as well.
Fantastic. In fact, this is the kind of debate we usually have now at the events we take part in, like the community point. Now we have Pay. What is Pay? It's the service for sending cryptocurrencies between Bit2Me users. With this, we have a new design, a new feature that basically syncs our contact list. Now, some users still have the previous version of the app, although they should update it. This is always important because it brings performance and security improvements. What happens if, for example, we want to send 100 euros worth of Bitcoin? I want to send 100 euros worth of Bitcoin to Javi, okay? He would like that.
He sure would.
Along those lines, if I go directly into Wallet, go to Operate, and try to send cryptocurrencies to a user, my contacts won't show up, okay? So how are we going to do it? We go to the left side tab and enter the MiPay or Pay service, okay? Once we enter there, the application will ask for access to our contacts. Once we grant this access, all of our contacts will appear, and then it's just a matter of finding Javi's contact information and sending him the 10, well, along those general lines, okay? I'd rather send you BM, okay? And then you can redeem them. If I send you BM, you can redeem them. Check this out.
We can do it live if you want. I'll stack up.
Let's keep going. If we don't have time, we could, well, we're running out of time. But I like it. I like that. Let's not miss out on it. Then we also have Manage Your Loans, Crypto Without Friction. Bit2Me, the website.
If you don't mind, I'd also like to mention this service since you're going to talk about loans. That's the idea.
Go ahead.
All right. So let's see. For those of you who already know about it, obviously, but for those who don't, Bit2Me Loan. Basically, what you get or what it allows you to do is to access liquidity, meaning you can get euros either in cryptocurrency or in actual euros without having to sell your crypto. So what you do is, if you have Bitcoin, if you have Ethereum, or if you have XRP, you leave it with Bit2Me and request a loan with an interest rate that works with a model called Lombard. Lombard means that the interest, well, you don't have a set repayment term. You can pay it back whenever you want, but the interest keeps adding up month by month, okay? You can see in BME in real time how the amount of interest you need to pay to recover your collateral is updated. With what specific and special feature? Exactly? Well, with the crucial feature that if the price of the collateralized asset drops significantly below the precise amount you originally borrowed from Bit2Me, we are then obligated to immediately sell that collateral. Why is this necessary? It is absolutely essential to recover the money, the funds that we initially lent to you. But
we notify you with that margin. We always notify you. We have a first margin at 65% where we alert the user to increase the collateral or to make a partial payment at 75%. If it reaches 85% and the user does nothing, that's when it auto liquidates.
This feature, which is also really cool, Giovanni, and I think it's amazing, is that there's a huge difference compared to traditional banks. It's an instant service. You don't have to go through any process or anything. Once you're a Bit2Me client, you've registered and everything, you can deposit your Bitcoin, and just by depositing your Bitcoin, your loan is already approved. You've already been granted the loan you need. In other words, it's immediate liquidity with a super simple, super easy process, right? Now, in
the simple part, it's important that thanks to user requests, we've also been asked for this. We have two options when taking out a loan. We can choose to repay it flexibly. For example, some users last year made purchases during the upcoming Black Friday and paid for them with their December bonus, okay? Everyone does it as they see fit. There are many options, many strategies. And then we also have the option that is the flexible and the periodic option. You decide, meaning you choose how much you want to pay each month. In other words, users have the flexible or periodic option. But you can't change it. That's important. Once you choose at the beginning, you can't change it later.
More things, okay? They're asking about the OTC service. Well, today we're not going to talk much about that, but basically, the OTC service we provide depends on whether you're an institution, a listed company, or an individual. Let's say it's a VIP service where we offer personalized attention to the client and guide them through the entire process with fees tailored to the client's profile, depending on the volume, etc., and with, as I said, more direct attention. And then if it's a company, for example, right now, listed treasuries are starting to buy Bitcoin, that's important because they have access to financing through mechanisms from the traditional world, from TradFi. So we provide some advice on that, and that's it. Let's continue.
The questions, we can't continue with the questions for now because
the topic of the listing, which I think is a milestone we've achieved at Bit2Me, and now it's not a matter of product, it's not about improvements to Bit.
Yes, we still have the new coins that keep coming in. In fact, the new coins are precisely in wallet. We have a new listing, which is Avantis and Operlager. Then the part that would be up to us is the communication function for the events. Before we move on, there are some frequently asked questions that I was able to ask Nilde directly in private, and if we could address them now, like what is the amount of BM in the 10% pool for breach of lockup? You've asked that a lot, and they've been able to give me the answer. We now have approximately 8.5 million BM accumulated from the early discounting of BM lockup funds. So that's very good. All right, we already know that this will later be redeemed with the service. What do you mean by redeemed? If you want to explain it briefly, what is the BM redemption service? OC.
Basically, if you haven't used BM redemption, as you know, Space Center has different levels, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And how do you access the levels? With points. What happens when you redeem BM permanently? You get points forever. So what you achieve is moving up in the, it's like buying points directly and you're paying for them, you're acquiring them with BM.
Then the action that is taken is to send them to a dead address, meaning those BMs are burned, they are removed from circulation. Now, another question we were also asked was by Alberto Toro Dal. Basically, he was asking us how the lockups work. He says, I'm considering whether to renew it or let it expire so I can lock it again depending on what's best. I'm not going to read the whole question, I'll just read the answer. Each contribution is linked to the market value at that moment. If it's renewed, that value is maintained. I hope that makes it clear. If not, we can continue discussing it in the Telegram group. Now, Javi, we should move on to the next part about the events we've been participating in. For example, on September 11th, when we were at Tech Hardware, which were awards focused on the technology sector, together with Skiller Academia, and some of our colleagues were there, like Jose Luis Cacer, who is the Chief Brand Officer. Then we were also present on November 16th. We were in Madrid at the Digital Assets Forum organized by El Confidencial.
Javier?
Exactly. We've also had quite a bit of media coverage. And what else did we have here, Javi? We can even note, well,
Let's see, yesterday, Jose Luis was there. I was there too at the What's Be Bitcoin, which is more of a Bitcoin-focused event. And there were some great debates that blew my mind, Giovanni, honestly. And tomorrow, the day after, and Thursday, we have the merge. The merge is the place, the meeting point between the world of TradeFi and the world of Bitcoin and crypto assets, which are just starting to connect. Well, we're going to have several panels there. Gabriel will be there, Alvaro will be there, and I'll be there too. And I have to speak in English. Oh my goodness. But, well, we'll do what we can. So yeah, we don't stop. That's the idea. To meet up with you all as well, to see you in person and get to know you is always a pleasure. So don't be shy about saying hi if you see us around.
If you pass by, we always have some surprise for the Bit2RO. And for the BM holders, we also have a different treatment with much more affection, of course. Along those lines, if you have the chance to participate this week, take advantage of it. It's really going to be quite interesting. Even though it's a more business-oriented, more professional environment, we're always willing to share with you. In fact, interesting things are coming from that moment on as well because things are being prepared. As I said, don't forget, the BM special is coming up now in November. There will be a special campaign to celebrate BM's anniversary, during which Neil will join us and share data about what's been happening so far and the next steps with BM. People always ask us about Ro, so he'll give us a bit more info again. I don't know how much we need to push him, basically as much as we can. You know it's like with Javi. When we push him a little, sometimes he gives us more spoilers than he should.
Well, yeah, that's just how it is. Well, look, we've almost hit the hour mark. Honestly, it's been really interesting, and we've also been able to answer some questions that came up live. Thank you all for being here. I'm going to ask for a like. Giovanni, I like how the big YouTubers do it. Give it a like if you enjoyed it, share it, and subscribe and hit the
word of the BMM exchange.
And that's it. See you in the next program. Really looking forward to Neil coming back. It's been a pleasure sharing this moment with you. And we hope that you've been, well, interested, that it's added value. And we'll see you next time. Okay, Bituero?
Soon.
Hug.
Thank you, Giovanni. Thank you, Jose.